listening to the Agent Survival Guide podcast, a podcast for today's insurance agents. Informing, educating, empowering, improving the way you do business in an industry that's anything but static. In today's episode, we are taking a close look at growth. So if you've ever wondered about how to grow your business, what your next step looks like, you are definitely not alone, and you've clicked on the right episode. I recently had the privilege of chatting with Christian Brindle, host of the 7 Figures or Bust podcast. And we talked about learning and growth from a couple of different perspectives. He shared his insight with me, and now I am excited to share that insight with you. Okay, well, in today's episode, we have a special guest joining us today. His name is Christian Brindle, and he has 2 podcasts to his name, a couple of books to his name, and a lot of Medicare expertise. So welcome to the podcast, Christian.
Thanks for having me, Sarah. I've loved your guys' show for some time, so it's an honor. I'm happy to be here.
We are happy to have you. Your podcast was one of the first ones that I saw out there when we started ours back in 2017. And that was the podcast that I believe you do for consumers to help educate them on everything that is involved in Medicare. Can you talk to us a little bit about how you got your start in the industry?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, like a lot of people in our space that I've come to know over the years, I was second generation. So I had a parent that was in the business for some time. So when I got in, I was 21. He had already been in the business for 25 years. And essentially, what we started doing at the beginning was I came in as a downline of my dad's. And a lot of people that have parents in the business, they'll come in as like an LOA for their parents' agency. They'll help build it up with the long-term ambition that they'll take it over one day. And that's just not the way we did it. My dad, I think at the time, he didn't want me to do some knuckle-headed thing at 21 and embarrass his agency that he had built at the time. And he had a nice little agency, had a good bit of clients, regional agency, 1 part-time employee kind of thing. And so that's kind of how I got my start in the business. I started as a downline of his, and over the years, I worked at building our agency up. And, today, fast forward to about 3 years ago, we bought his agency out, and the insurance agency owns 4 other subsidiary companies, and we have around 300 employees. And so we've grown exponentially. So it's crazy what can happen in 10, 11 years time span.
Right. It's interesting to me that you both had the foresight when you were in your 20s to not go down that road quite then, because I think that often now with today's generation that they're coming up and they almost don't have the ability to have that growing period where nothing is recorded online. Unfortunately, everything for them is recorded online nowadays. But I do find it interesting how it's kind of a lot of people, they either get in through family, they've always planned to get into the business, they sort of fell into the business that was family owned, or like me, it just seemed like a very stable and secure place to end up. You mentioned a little bit about some of the podcasts that you have. What is your specific area of focus?
Yeah, that's a great question. At this point, we almost have 2 sides of our company. We have a consumer side of the company and the agent side of the company. Mm-hmm. And so I feel like my specific focus as the owner of the business, I go back and forth, right, in terms of like where I'm needed. Thankfully, we have other leadership in the company now that kind of helps me maintain things so I don't have to be everywhere at the same time, because I think, Sarah, you and I probably both know that doesn't usually work out great when you try to be everywhere at the same time. But essentially, I would say everything that we've built as a company, I think, is based on the foundation of what we've done on our consumer side of the business. As an agency, from writing new policies to acquiring new clients, which we've done since the beginning, we've started acquiring agents' books of businesses over the past couple of years, and that's become a pretty big portion of growing our clientele. the success there almost creates the content and the fodder for what we bring to the agent side of the business, from trainings to recruiting to we own a lead company called Lead Heroes is one of our companies. The success we have internally with those leads help promote that to agents across the board, so kind of everything, I would say everything starts and ends with the success that we have internally with the consumer side of things with the agency. And the success that we have, we basically take to agents and kind of try to help them duplicate what we're doing at that point in time.
That makes sense. It's an interesting place to start. And I think for a lot of people in our industry, sometimes it is difficult to take what we are doing and base it towards the agents and realize how that language and how we speak needs to change, what we talk about needs to change. But really, the ultimate driver of everything that we do, I mean, I can honestly say that's in a lot of the content that we create here, it's very consumer driven, that we want it to be, even if it's taking the pathway of kind of going by the agent on its way to the consumer, the idea is how can we best provide resources, education, knowledge, and what we see that our consumers are going to want to know, that they need to know, and where they are as far as what they do know and what they need to know. How do we come in and kind of bridge that gap in there? Because I do think there is a gap in the insurance education in general, as far as the public goes. Obviously, you saw that too. Otherwise, you wouldn't have created the podcast in the first place.
Right. Yep.
So you talked a little bit about how you got into the industry. What were some of your impetuses for creating like your podcast? And we probably should mention that you have two different podcasts. You have the Everything Medicare Insurance podcast. That is for education, everything on the consumer side. But then you also have the agent podcast, and that is the 7-Figure or Bust podcast.
Yes. And thank you for that. Yeah, I think like you kind of mentioned earlier, you hit it right on the head. The Everything Medicare podcast is something we started doing. It was really the first piece of content we did as a company. We started it, I want to say, in the beginning of 2018. So probably very shortly after you guys started your show. Mm-hmm. And at the time, when I first came into the business, I guess I'll rewind back a little bit. When I first came into the business, having a parent that was in the business as long as my dad was, he grew his business in a very different time. In the 90s, early 2000s, a lot of cold calls, a lot of door knocking, a lot of old school tactics. And so in the early years, that's what I was taught to do in terms of growing my business, cold calling for Medicare supplement business, getting direct mail cards, knocking on doors, things like that. I got pretty good at it and I worked really hard, but I started feeling like after I was in the business about 3 years, 4 years, when you're doing that, especially in today's day and age, it feels like you're growing by just centimeters. You're just inching along. The growth is slow and you're busting your hump to get any centimeter of growth that you're getting, right? So there's this feeling that it's like there's got to be an easier way. There's got to be a better way to do this. And so I started to kind of experiment with digital marketing, content creation, and everything like that. And around that time, I started to teach myself Facebook ads. I started to teach myself digital marketing, website design. And along that same lines, I started to realize that podcasting was starting to really boom. It was really starting to take off. And I noticed there wasn't really any consumer-facing Medicare podcast. There was one other one that I was aware of when I first started doing ours. And one thing I noticed about their podcast, I actually was a fan. I thought they did a really good job on it. But one thing I feel like they didn't do as well as they could have is they weren't really consistent about it. They put out an episode and then like 3 months would go by. They put another episode. Maybe they put one out back-to-back weeks and then they go 6 months without. And I was like, imagine if someone did this on a consistent basis, week in and week out, like what this could be, the SEO portion of it, right? Like people searching this stuff, like it can come up in searches on Google searches. Like this could be a great way to promote my business. And so that's really what got me into the podcasting side of things, because I kind of looked at it almost as like an untapped source of promotion for my business. And of course, the podcast is very educational for anybody that's ever listened to it. Like it's not a big infomercial. There are a lot of podcasts out there that they just are like a big commercial for their company. That's not what we tried to do. We tried to present real solutions, education with really no strings attached, and then a very small snippet at the end of, if you want to work with us, here's how you can get in touch with us, kind of thing. And at the beginning, I thought, I'm like, no one's going to listen to this. I mean, I'll never forget when I first started podcasting. I don't know, Sarah, if you've seen this on your guys' end, but like the evolution of what you become as a content creator. When I was first making that podcast, I was using an app on my phone. There was no video that we were doing with it. And I was literally just talking into the app. And that was how we recorded the first like 20 episodes. And I just didn't know any better. I was like, how do I do this? I have no idea. I remember I interviewed a few people and I didn't quite know the best way to do it. So we put them on speakerphone on one phone. And then we're having the app on my phone, my cell phone, recording us talking. It was horrible. It was horrific. So just to like look back at that and how it got started. But people listened. Like as time went on, there grew an audience for the show and people really loved the show. And it became a very widely listened to program. And it ended up doing really good things for our business.
It's funny that you say that because I think when we first started out, oh my goodness, I was recording in a conference room just with all kinds of furniture around me trying to dampen the sound.
Yes.
I listened back to some of those episodes and it's just like, ooh, like slow down. People aren't going to be able to understand anything that you're saying. But it definitely, the space has really evolved. I'm sure you guys probably saw during the pandemic, we had like a little bit of a drop off at first. And then all of a sudden in May of 2020, it just skyrocketed. Everybody started getting into that working from home groove and like everyone discovered podcasts.
Yes.
So it's been very interesting to see the growth and everything. But I think you mentioned something that is really important, not just with podcasting, but I think content in general is just consistency. And you really have to sort of have this schedule. You have to be showing up for the people that you are putting the show on for. And it's the same way with being an agent. You want to have that consistency. You are going to be making the calls, you're going to be setting the appointments, all of that kind of stuff, even when you're doing cold calls for like, say, MedSup or anything like that. You are going to have to make a certain amount of calls with the idea that a certain percentage isn't going to answer, a certain percentage isn't going to be interested, or they've already got everything squared away, they're good. So the content marketing learning curve was interesting on our end as well. When we are thinking about those insurance agents who are just coming into the business, obviously, I think I would recommend both of our podcasts to them just as
Absolutely.
Like a start and like a learning point. But what advice would you have for someone who is just starting out, really just brand new to the industry?
Yeah, no, I love the question. And I think there's really three pillars that you have to nail if you want to make it, right? When you're coming in as a new agent, especially today in 2025, I think it's a unique time, I think, that we're in right now. In some ways, it's easier than ever. We have more tools at our disposal than ever. And then in other ways, it's more difficult than ever. And so I think you have to play by the rules of the current day and age of 2025. So I think for me, my three things I would really focus on is number one, and I don't think this has ever changed, you want to be a sponge as much as you can, right? Like, I feel like the people that come in that make it, they have a genuine curiosity about the space, about Medicare, about the plans, about the carriers. Like, they just want to learn. They want to soak this stuff up. And they come in genuinely as a blank slate. I know you guys have worked with tons of agents over the years. One thing I find that is the biggest killer of agents is they're not trying to be as much of a sponge, and more so like they're trying to find simple answers to the standpoint they're like, oh, it's this. Like it's almost like a little bit of an ego thing, like I know this, I'm smart, I know this. It's like, no, this is a wacky world of, when it comes to Medicare. Like anything you think just throw it out, because like when it comes to the way normal life works or logic or anything like that, like there's all these little things that you need to learn.
Right.
And you just need to understand that you're not going to come in and learn it overnight. It's going to take some time, and it's going to take a lot of studying and being a sponge, soaking in that information. So I think that's number one. I think number two, when you first come in, there's so many agents that don't understand. To me, this is a people business, so you can spend all kinds of time doing all these little things in your business, right? Like getting your business card, figuring out your logo, getting your website set up, creating a Facebook page, whatever you're trying to do. And you still haven't spoken to anyone. You still haven't talked to anyone. It's a contact sport. And so your success is going to be measured based on how many people you have conversations with,
right.
So I think you have to understand that, right? Like when I say earlier, like you have to be a sponge, that's true. But you don't want to sit all day on trainings either. Like, you want to balance it out, right? Like you want to make sure that you're spending your time that you'd be listening to, I don't know, like instead of listening to Joe Rogan, maybe you can listen to the Agent Survival Guide podcast, right? And learn, that way. So like, what are you putting into your mind in terms of that? And then I think the third thing is coming in with a real good understanding of, in this business, every piece of business you're going to acquire, any applications you're going to be able to write, any clients you're going to be able to obtain are going to cost you either time or money. And formulating a strategy based off of what you have more to give. Usually when you first come in, you have more time to give than you have money. So you formulate a marketing attack. You formulate a strategy based off of, how can I spend my time to acquire new business? How can I ground and pound a little bit? How can I do some grassroots marketing? How can I network with other businesses, other professionals, to get in referral relationships? And then as time goes on and you start to acquire more clients, you have more money coming in, your business is more established, you're busier, and you have less time to give, but more money. Well, that's when it's probably time to spend a little bit more on leads and on marketing and on advertising and seminars, whatever it is you're doing to grow your business. And that's how you can really take your business, I feel like, to the next level. So those would be probably my three things for new agents. There's certainly more than that. We could probably have a whole podcast about that alone. But I think those things are really important. And there are things I see when agents don't get them right, they fail over and over and over again.
Right. I love that idea of insurance as a contact sport. You have to get out there. You can't just. It's definitely not something that you can expect business to come to you. You do have to do something in order to go out and get it, whatever it is, like what you said, whether it's leads, whether it is compliant cold calling, depending on what product you're selling. I think you gave some really good pointers there for anybody just starting out. You touched a little bit on how we can elevate our efforts once we have a little bit more money, but is there anything else that you recommend agents do once they have a little bit more experience under their belt?
Yeah, I think long term, it's a very valuable thing for agents to learn how to generate their own leads. And there's a lot of different ways you can do that. Like I think when agents think about generating their own leads, it's a scary concept. And I think they think about themselves like designing some crazy website, that's ranking in Google searches. And no, it doesn't have to be that complicated. Like you could start doing seminars every couple of weeks, and advertising them yourself or working with a vendor to advertise them. Seminars are, I feel like, one of the most tried and true ways to grow your business, really. I think it's such a plug and play thing, right? It's efficient. You do one presentation for a mass group of people, and some are going to be interested, some aren't, but it's an efficient way to do it. You spend an hour presenting maybe, and it's almost like you've ran 25 appointments or 30 appointments or something like that. And so with seminars, like one thing we've seen some of our agents doing is like, we have agents that do the dinner seminars and they do them very well, but they're expensive, right? Some agents, when they're starting out, it's tough to kind of afford that. Another thing they can do is like low budget seminars. So like I call them that because they're not as expensive. You find some kind of place, like for us in our area, like it works really well with libraries. Libraries either give you free meeting space, meeting rooms, or you can pay a small fee, like $50, $100, something like that. You don't feed them dinner. So basically your cost is to advertise. You get a list, you get a mailer, you mail it. And you might not get as many people as you would a dinner seminar. Like the dinner seminar is going to attract the plate lickers and things like that. You're going to get more people just naturally, but you'll get probably higher intent people. The people that show up for your library seminar genuinely want to know about Medicare. You know that for a fact. There's no other reason why they're there. They have no other motive. I think if an agent wanted to learn how to run Facebook ads, that's a great thing to do. I think it's probably a little trickier today than it has been in recent memory. I mean, I love learning how to run Facebook ads and learning digital marketing if you have a desire to do that, because if you really get it down, you really do control down to the T in most cases that I'm going to spend, let's say, $500 and I know for a fact I'm going to get this many leads once you've really got it down. It's like you're turning on a faucet in terms of lead flow coming, and you can start it, you can stop it. You have full control over the distribution of that lead flow. But there's so many different ways you can generate your own leads. And so I think for an agent, learning how to market themselves and learning some type of marketing that can allow them to generate their own leads and have that control, I think is really what separates the agents that go really far from the ones that don't.
Yeah, definitely. I will point out my sister is actually a librarian, and I suggested to her that it might be a good idea to partner with some local insurance agents because it is such a great idea. And librarians are always looking for programs that they can hold at their facilities that are educational in nature. So it's a perfect fit. If that is something that has scared you away, don't be scared of people saying no, because really that's the worst thing they can say is no. Somebody else is going to say yes down the line, but they're not going to be mean to you. They're not going to be ugly to you. They might say no, but they might not. When it comes down to the way that you do your work and the way that you go about crafting and growing your different business ventures, you have so many of them. You've kind of branched off in a lot of directions. Is there a particular mindset or mantra that you have that you live by that has enabled that growth?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, so for me, I feel like one thing that has allowed me to be able to do that and us be able to, as a company, diversify in the way that we have. I mean, we have a virtual assistant business. We have a lead generation business. We have an event company. We do a conference every year for agents. Craig's actually speaking at it this year.
Yes.
We have a training company where we do consulting for agencies. So like, there's always the concern of growing too wide and not growing vertically. Right? There's a concern with that. I think for us, like what's allowed us to do that is having and developing additional leadership inside of the company to where like we have people in place that can help really manage the day-to-day of some of these other businesses to where like I'm involved, but I'm not involved in every single little detail. A big part of that, like about a year ago, a little bit more, January of 2024, my company merged with Lead Heroes. So Lead Heroes was created by Glenn Shelton about a decade ago. And so we merged with that company. He also had the virtual assistant business. So I have a business partner to where I can lean on him. We can divide and conquer in different areas as well. You know, and on his team, he has leadership in place that really is very key players in what we do. They help manage things. They oversee people. They oversee departments. And then on our side in the agency, we have the same thing. We have leadership in place that can kind of manage the day-to-day of certain things and to where like we're able to focus on what we need to focus on for the overall company. And so I feel like, I think one thing that people get wrong is they try to go wide before they've gone vertical. And I think you have to go vertical in something first before you try to add layers to it. I have this concept that I've kind of talked about over the years. It's almost like you're growing a tree. And think about the tree as like the tree is your business. And additional things you're doing in your business is like branches to the business. You can't have the branches without the tree, right? You can't have the cart before the horse deal. So for us, like what we were able to do is we were able to really develop our client side of the business and our internal agency. And that almost was like the foundation of our business. And then when we merged with Lead Heroes, they had a foundation of their business. And I think that was really the key. And then when we did add additional things to it, the question always is like, how does this relate to the primary thing we're doing, right? In order for something to be a branch of the tree that is your business, it has to connect. It can't be something totally random and unrelated.
Yeah.
It almost has to relate to what you're actually doing. So like everything we do is related to the insurance business. Everything we do supports and nurtures other parts of the business. And that's strategic. I don't think people want to do that until they have something that they can consider their tree, if you will. And I don't think people want to do it until they have the infrastructure in place, systems, processes, employees, leaders, those kind of things to be able to add new layers to what you're doing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's one thing that I think we have started to see just in our own, what we're doing here at Ritter. And we had our other companies that came in that we partnered with a couple of companies like that. And then obviously we partnered with Integrity. Everything that we do is very intentional. And I think that is, you kind of hit it right on the head there, that you have to be intentional in your growth, but you also have to sort of have that solid foundation in order to be able to grow and kind of get it going. And then you can span out a little bit. Is there anything that you have been recently listening to, watching, reading, anything that has had like a profound impact on you, or just something that you found super interesting recently? It doesn't even necessarily need to be related to the insurance business. Bonus points if it does, but.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I'm always listening to something. I'm always reading something. I love to read. I read a book last year that I'd recommend everybody that listens to this read. It's by Patrick Bet-David, another Integrity partner, right? And it's a book that he wrote called Your Next 5 Moves. And I found that book to be really, really good. It's just an overall business book about basically strategizing. And it hits on so many different really important things. It talks about self-awareness, understanding and how to really identify like who you are and what you want. And I feel like a lot of people fall into that trap, particularly like they are chasing someone else's dream. They've been sold this idea that they should want something, but it's not really what they want, right? And they don't really find happiness or purpose. The book talks about that a lot. It talks about hiring. It talks about making power moves. It's such a great business book overall. So I highly recommend it. I could talk about books for another hour with you, but that's one in particular that I read probably in the last year that I really enjoyed it. I got a lot out of the book.
Okay, I will have to add that to my list because I have not read that one yet. Very interesting. I've tried to get back into books. I did really well during 2023, failed miserably last year. Podcasts, I am great at it. If it comes in podcast or audiobook form, I am fantastic at being able to listen to that. Reading, and it's sad because that was one thing that I really do enjoy reading. So I'm going to have to pick that one up. Is there anything that you have going on right now that you would like to particularly shout out here on the show or let people know about?
Oh, well, thanks, Sarah. Yeah, I mean, probably the main thing would be our conference that's coming up, the Seven Figure Medicare Agent Summit. So we have a Facebook group for Medicare agents called Seven Figure Medicare Agent. It's grown a ton. We created it in 2020. And kind of meant to be like an open forum, like a dialogue for agents to come and share ideas, ask questions. And it just grew so explosively. Like we're almost at 10,000 agents now. And we'll probably hit 10,000 agents by the summit, actually. We're very close. And so the event was like a spinoff of the Facebook group. That's the way it was started to be. I've been invited to speak at a lot of events. I've attended a lot of industry events, and I love events, but there was always this thing when I would go to events where I was like, if I was running it, I'd do it differently. I'd do this, I'd do that, I'd do this, I'd do that. And then one day I was just like, why don't we do an event? And so we started it in 2022. So 2025 will be year 4 of the event. And as of yesterday, we're 90 days away. So 89 days as of the day of recording this away from the event. So it's coming up quickly. We highly think like if you want to go to an event and you don't want to be pitched. A lot of events are pitch fests. A lot of events are very motivational, right? Like rah kind of thing. Our event is practical information. We invite people from all over the industry to come and share ideas for 2 days. We ask them not to pitch anything. We ask them just to present real practical information for 2 days. And so every year we get consistent feedback that it's the best content of any event of the year from people that go to multiple. And that's what we are geared to be at with it. And last year we had about 350 agents there. This year we're kind of anticipating we'll have at least that, if not a little bit more. And so the Seven Figure Medicare Agent Summit, if you guys are looking to kind of get out, network, interact with people that are going to the same places that you are, that deal with the same struggles that you do, and learn new creative ways to grow your business, that's a great place to do it. We have less than 100 tickets left. So we'd love to see you guys if you guys can make the time. It's June 22nd through 24th, Salt Lake City, Utah.
You answered it without me even having to ask. I was going to ask what makes your event different and unique, and you answered it right there as far as just making sure that it's really practical things that agents are going to come and they're going to learn and they're going to get a lot of benefit from attending. Very cool. Is there anything else that you would like to touch on here today? Anything, any final words for agents listening or anything like that?
Yeah. Well, first off, Sarah, again, thank you for having me. This was a great time. I really appreciate it. And we're looking forward to having you on our show.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And yeah, my final thoughts, guys, for anybody that's listening is to make it, I feel like in this business, I think, of course, you have to work hard. Everybody tells you that. Mm-hmm. But I think as time goes on, I think it's really important to continue to learn and evolve in terms of how you're working. I think you can learn how to work smarter over time and do things easier. And I think a lot of people, like myself included, it took me probably too long at the beginning of my career to really learn that. I was doing things probably the hardest way I possibly could in my early years. And if I could go back and start over again, I would probably implement things quicker, right? Like with all the technology, with all the systems that you guys have available today, like with platforms like Medicare Center makes your life so much easier as an agent, you know, having a good CRM in place, automating things, not being afraid to hire somebody on to come on and help your business, because that can be such a game changer, but it is scary, especially, you know, if you've never done it before. It's a very large expense. It's a risk for sure. I think just being consistently committed to moving forward and having progress, I think you'll get somewhere positive every time. I think where people kind of get, especially in our space, you see this a lot. People get into a place where they build something up a little bit and then they maintain. They just chill. And in my opinion, if you're not growing, you're shrinking. I don't think you ever really stay where you are. I think you're either moving forward or backwards. And I think if you really want to make it, you just have to keep moving forward and not give up, not quit. And I think if you do that, something positive will typically happen.
Right. Oh, I love that. If you're not growing, you're shrinking. Yeah, that is, I am definitely of the opinion that you learn, you continue learning as you go, and you just, as you pursue that, avenues and roads are going to open up for you. So yeah, well, thank you so much, Christian, for talking with us today, for all of your insight that you've given us. We will definitely have links to all of the things that you mentioned, both of your podcast, as well as links to your event that hopefully will sell out. I have no doubt with 100 tickets left. I think you guys might just do it. So
Fingers crossed.
Yeah. Thank you so much for being on the show today.
Thank you, Sarah. It was a great time, and I appreciate you having me.
Special thanks again to Christian Brindle for the interview. We talked about a lot of resources during our conversation, like the podcast, the Facebook group, and the 7 Figures Summit. You'll find the links to those resources and more in our episode notes. Thanks so much for taking the time to listen to the show. We will see you next episode. The Agent Survival Guide podcast is a production of Ritter Insurance Marketing, an Integrity company. Special thanks to our guest, Christian Brindle. Recording and production by me, Sarah Ruppel. Podcast designed by Urban Rivera. Artwork by Tina Lamoureux. Follow along with our show wherever you like to listen. Already following? Rate and review our show on Apple or Spotify.